Okay, so tonight's conversation is called Game Changer 21. This is a series of 21 questions. And these are 21 questions that you can take every stress, challenge, or problem through. And it helps you learn how to be better at handling reality. It's almost like an invisible coach or therapist. Okay, so it's going to be specific questions that will redirect focus in order to turn pain into clarity, understanding, and then power. All right. Now, all of the 21 questions, basically, there's three categories of questions. Some of the questions are under the what's good about this category. Some are about what we can learn about a situation. And then the third category is how can we make it better? So what we're going to do here is I'm just going to share screen this, and I will throw this in later. So that's the 21 questions right there. Now, what we're going to do here is we're going to do a little bit of a group practice round through this. And the way it's going to work is I'm going to have everybody imagine a situation, a problem, stress, or challenge. And then we're going to, as a group, take it through the 21 questions to see how much better we feel. And the reason for doing this is that ultimately, we need to discipline the mind. The mind can kind of be like an unruly dog, like it tries to run off in all directions. And dog owners may know that if you let your dog run off, it usually rolls in something stinky, right? So we need a reliable way to just pull the brain back and pull the thoughts and focus back and keep it on track. This is how we essentially work on ourselves, by training ourselves to do that. This is the pain that ends pain. Okay. And if we want to be happy, then if we desire genuine happiness, we need to make a conscious decision to fully commit to cultivating mental resilience and empowering ourselves with the skills to navigate reality effectively. So, before we get into that, though, what I want to do is everyone just throw this into the chat. What are some things that people might say to themselves that make them feel lousy? What are some things people might say to themselves that just make a situation worse, that either put themselves down or just keep them down? So just throw some comments into the chat. What are some things like, okay, good. So I'm not good enough, definitely one, right? And you might even say, I'll never be good enough. That's definitely one that would do it, right? Why do bad things always happen to me? Joel mentioned, comparing ourselves to somebody else, right? And we might compare ourselves to somebody else and be like, why do others have it better? I'm terrible at this. I'm fat. Yeah, those things would work too. We might also say something like, I'll never achieve my goals, so why bother trying? Or nothing ever goes right for me, or nobody cares about me, or I always mess things up. I can't do anything right. I'm too old. I'm too young. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not worthy of love. I should be married with kids by now, whatever, right? Excellent. So we've got a whole bunch of them. Now, I just want to ask, I love it, Patty, too old, too young. I just want to ask, have you ever said any of these things to yourself, right? Have you ever said any of these things to yourself? Patty, never. I've never said anything. Have you ever had an internal dialogue that was disempowering, right? And think about, you don't have to throw it into the chat, but think about something that you might say to yourself that kind of gets you down or gets you feeling lousier. Think about what one of the main ones might be for you, right? So here's what we're going to do. And we'll come back to that. Because a lot of times we do have an internal dialogue that just brings us down. And that will be one of the themes of what we're getting into here. Here's what I want you to imagine, though, okay? And this example is inspired by Michael Singer, who wrote The Untethered Soul. All right. And I saw him about a month ago down in Florida. And so here's the challenge I want you to imagine. I want you to imagine that you keep investing your money in a financial advisor who is a family friend, But every time you give them your savings and your money and they invest it for you, you lose. You lose money every single time. And this has been going on for many, many years now, and you have lost tons of money with them. Okay? So once again, you're investing in a financial advisor and you just keep losing money. Now, I want you to score this on a scale of 1 to 10 in terms of how much this would stress you out. Once you realize, like, oh my gosh, I've invested so much money with this person over the years and they have just lost me every single time. So 10 means it would keep you up at night, right? So just write and throw it into the chat. How stressed out would you be, scale of 1 to 10? If you keep investing in a financial advisor and every single time you do, they just keep costing you money. Perfect. And we got a lot of scores in there, 9.5s, 10s, 7.5s, 10s. Yeah, need to find a better financial advisor. 10. Okay, most people are like really high on this one. All right, so here's what we're going to do. I want you to remember what did you expect after the first 3 times? Chris's comment, that's great. I want you to remember your score because we're going to come back to it. We're going to see how much these 21 questions help you feel better about the situation, okay? Because problems, stresses, and challenges will always happen. Mental resilience is all about being able to handle it with good form. Questions direct our focus, direct our thoughts, and can help us ultimately handle reality better. So the first question we want to ask about this particular situation is, why should I be grateful? Why should I be grateful? I'll give an example. I should be grateful that this is a financial advisor, which means I have a surplus of money and it's not a debt counselor. So that means I'm probably in a better financial situation just because I'm able to use a financial advisor. All right. So that's a sample answer here. Who else has an answer? Throw it in the chat, or we can have people go on and talk and share. Grateful to support a friend is what Chris said. Yep. Why else should we be grateful?
I thought the same thing. Like, if you're able to afford a financial advisor, you're probably, at least able to make a shift, make it back somehow. I also sort of believe in the whole, you get back more than, again, I don't want to get to like the face because people are different, but there is a lot of things out there in the universe. Like, something gets taken from you, you do get back if you like let it go. Don't want to get too yogi-y, or faithy here, but that is one thing I think too, is like the quicker you just let it go, move on, find somebody else, the quicker you'll earn it back in another shape or form. It's my personal thought.
Excellent. Yes, you get to learn healthy detachment to material things. There's a yogi answer, right? It's like, all right, we're not taking the world too seriously, right? We have, Colby said grateful to learn from mistakes. Celine said grateful to learn from this experience, know what to ask for and look for in the next financial advisor.
At least you're paying attention to your finances.
Yeah, it's a good point. At least you know the outcome you're getting, so you can change your approach, right? You could also say, at least it wasn't more money that I lost. Like, we're getting an education on this. So that's number 1. Why should we be grateful? So now why don't we go on to number 2? Number 2 is, how are things not as bad as they seem? So this one does diffuse a lot of those intense emotions we have when something kind of doesn't go according to plan. So how are things not as bad as they seem? What are some thoughts here?
I think the fact that you can keep putting money into it.
Yes. Excellent. The fact that you could keep investing, it's not like you only had a surplus of money at one point, right? So how are things not as bad as they seem? Charmaine, good to see you.
Hey guys, sorry I'm late.
That's okay. You were forgiven before you even apologized.
Thank you.
I was gonna say, at least you're not bankrupt. That's good.
Yeah, at least you didn't lose more money in this situation. You're not going to die a horrible death from this, right? You can still decide what happens next. You can still make more money in your life. Maybe you still have some money left, right? So there's a lot of reasons why it's not as bad as it might seem, even though we might think, initially emotionally, it might feel like a 9.5, 10 out of 10. It may not be as bad as they seem. Now, And, Celine makes a good point. You should always invest what you can lose. So it's always not as bad as it seems because you're not losing your life savings here. Right. Excellent. Next thing we go into is number 3. What help and resources are available? What help and resources are available in this situation?
Well, you can talk to your advisor and see what kind of investments they are using. If, for example, they are buying one stock each time, and that's very difficult because you're picking out of thousands of stocks, and it's also kind of like that guy on the horse that Tony Robbins talks about. The sun falls off, the horse comes and goes, breaks his leg, war, all that kind of thing. So there are so many types of investments. So if your advisor is constantly using one strategy, there's many other strategies out there you could discuss. You also, another resource is just the ability to communicate and talk to your advisor and say, this is my concern, my frustration. What are some other things that you might suggest, or how can we better work together so I feel like maybe I have some input into what's being done versus just kind of writing the check and then, it vanishes.
Exactly. So, you brought up some really good points. Like, one is our financial advisor should be available to help us gain clarity and understanding and maybe even redirect the approach. The other is that there are other investment approaches available. There might even be friends and family and other advisors available who can give us guidance from maybe a different level of experience or a different value set, right? And then, for myself and Megan, we live in Canada where there's a social safety net. The government will just give you support if you lose all your money, right? What other help and resources are available in this particular situation?
Other financial advisors?
Yes. And Chat GPT. Just ask them what to do about the situation. Right, Patty? I'm surprised you didn't say Chat GPT.
But you can also direct it yourself. You can go to companies where you just open an account and you make all the investment decisions. So you've got to do a little bit of work to understand what all the options are. But, sometimes that's a better option for people based on balances, experience, what they're after as well. So that could be something.
Yeah. Excellent. So, the key thing is to know that, in any situation, it immediately diffuses the stressful intensity once we realize that there are lots of help and resources available. As Tony Robbins has so often said, there's no lack of resources, just resourcefulness. And I'm just seeing what Chat GPT would say about this, because now we live in a world where we have artificial intelligence, and we can see right there, okay, assess your goals and risk tolerance, diversify your portfolio, understand your investments, fees and costs, be aware of the costs with the investments, long-term perspective, stay informed with marketing trends and economic news, consider do-it-yourself investing, periodically review your portfolio with your advisor, be patient, educate yourself. Boom. Look at the world we live in. There's 10 things immediately to help me with this problem, right?
Damn you, artificial intelligence.
What a powerful resource right there. You just throw anything into the chat. Okay. Let's go on to the next question. The next question is, what resources do I have? So I'm going to throw some of the questions just into the chat here. What resources do I have inside of, hold on, that was sorry to Colby. Let me just go, everyone. Next question is, in this situation, what resources do I have inside of me? What resources do I have inside of me?
The ability to go out and learn it for yourself.
Oh, yes. Yeah, so Whitney brings up a huge point. So rather than indulging in the despair of helplessness, we realize that we are a highly capable learner. And once we are highly motivated, 10 out of 10 motivated, who knows what we're capable of doing, right? So one of my clients, she was a single mom, and she learned how to do like investments, and she invested in like all into like Warren Buffett's, I think it's like Berkshire Hathaway, and she ended up becoming super rich. But she was like a single mom. It's the only job she could do was like investments in her spare time. She had like no background in all of it, and that became her life. Just because she just made it her number one focus, even though she knew nothing, had no training. She just was able to figure it out, right? So we might say, we're healthy and capable enough to earn more money, right? We can provide value and get paid for that value in infinite ways. There's so many different ways we could make money doing the jobs we have now, but we could always sidestep into different jobs and careers if we needed to and still provide value to the world and get paid for that value. So
I feel like another thing to add to that section would be to work on your like thoughts and beliefs around the situation, right? Like if you're having negative thoughts or you don't believe that you're going to like win back your investments, then you most likely won't.
yes, yeah. Colby, that's a huge answer. I have the ability to manage my state and turn from hopelessness to hopeful and from self-doubt to confident. And I have the ability to switch myself into a highly motivated and empowered version of myself. And these 21 questions are one of the ways to do it, right? So Celine, it was good seeing you. Celine had to take off. It was great to see her. It's been a while. So
Yeah, it's like, well, if you believe you can or you believe you can't, you're probably right.
absolutely. So we have the ability to get ourselves maximally motivated to make the best out of the situation in whatever way necessary. It's find a way or make a way, right? Number 5 is, how might this lead to growth and progress? Apart from Megan's answer about, as a yogi, it helps us to learn healthy detachment to material things like money. I mean, one way to get that is to lose things and you could be detached.
Hopefully we learn other ways.
Yeah. How might this lead to growth and progress? Charmaine, do you have a thought on this one?
I think just being open to things sometimes, a lot of times we are internally resistant. And I think just being open can help us, see things a little bit differently, let your mind continue to work even while you're not actively thinking you're open to ideas.
You know what? That's such a brilliant answer, because ultimately this does humble us, right? That we're not right as often as we think we're right. We thought this was a good idea. It wasn't a good idea. There's more for us to learn. We need to fundamentally distrust some of our assumptions and how we're investing our time, our money, our resources, right? So this helps keep us humble, which can open us up to better ways of moving forward, which can be very progressive, right? Whitney, do you have any thoughts on this one? How might this lead to growth and progress?
I think that was the one where I said that you can go out and learn it for yourself.
Yeah.
Or did I skip it?
You could say that. That works. Yeah.
No,
So
I skipped it. I was on the last question still.
it doesn't
Sorry.
matter. We're going to use that one anyway. So yeah, this might lead to growth and progress because it might redirect your learning in a new direction. You might learn to be more efficient with your spending because you have less money. You might learn to be more resourceful. You might learn how to set boundaries. Maybe we got stuck in people pleasing because this was a family friend, this investor, and we decided to go along to get along. And maybe we kept believing their endless excuses as they kept, maybe they kept blaming the markets instead of taking responsibility here. And we need to set healthy boundaries on how
That's
we
what I-
allow other people to treat us, right?
You froze, but I was going to say, I think boundaries, this is an excellent opportunity for people to set a boundary with themselves and with their financial advisor. Because then the expectation is set. Things either need to change or move on.
Yeah, yeah. And as Tony would say, people treat us the way we train them to treat us. So this can be a good opportunity, and this can compel us to move forward with our own boundaries boot camp in our life.
Yeah.
All right. So now there is some redundancy in some of these questions, but I will so sometimes we have answers that'll apply to a number of the 21 questions. We'll go on to question number 6. How is this whole situation happening for my benefit? Right? How is this whole situation happening for my benefit?
I was thinking for the learning, I know again, to your point, we covered it in some different aspects, but learning. So maybe you never would have dug in and learned about your own investments if this didn't happen.
You're right. You're right. And maybe the pain of the situation helps us learn lessons that help us achieve greater things in future. So maybe there's a greater purpose to the suffering, in that it is a fertilizer for our personal growth and wisdom that helps us go even further in life, because now we become more conscientious. We become better able to read people and manage our relationships. And maybe we become more self-reliant, and we become more aware, right?
That's a great point. When we first started like investing in like a 401k or some kind of retirement plan, the first company that we did, you know, in the chat GPT, it mentioned the fees. And so like we weren't really that. And I think I was reading Tony's, I forget his financial money master of the game or whatever it is. But somewhere in there, it mentioned, you know, doing your homework on fees. And what we realized was, even though there were some small, like, I don't know, 2%, 2.5%, 3% fees, that over the life of your investment, it goes like a $1 million investment could be brought down to like $600,000 just by those little tiny fees. So yeah, to that credit, like learning about that and actually having some pain points to be like, oh, we need to do better research next time. So we did better research, found a different company that had much lower fees. So yeah, it's actually, in a way, it's good, because if you hadn't challenged that, then you'd be in not as great a place, 20, 30 years from now.
Yeah. Yeah. And yours reminds me of another point that, maybe financial success too soon could turn out to be a bad thing, because maybe we become a little bit more reckless in the risks we take. Maybe we become money obsessed and greed overtakes us, and we kind of get consumed with luxuries and vanities. And that, just like vodka, money can do weird things to the soul, right? So who knows how this is happening for our benefit?
Well, just kind of on a real quick side note on that, I read an article about the Pac-12 in college sports, and how the guy that got ousted a couple years ago basically hit this massive home run, did this great thing. And so he did like this whole, I don't know, TV contract or something. And so he rode that wave for so long, and then basically destroyed the Pac-12. And so now this whole thing's fallen apart, and more than half the teams have left it. So as a conference in American collegiate sports, it's like falling apart. But he got that early massive success, and everyone kind of thought, oh man, this guy's brilliant, right? Because they confused fortune, a fortunate thing they did, with skill or intelligence or any of those other things. And had he had less success or adversity, then they could have had a totally different outcome.
Absolutely.
I think also understanding your values around finances. I don't think people really understand it initially. They want to make more money, but then when they start to drill down on it, they start to understand, oh, this is a misplaced value that I was raised, but my parents had these scarcity ideas, or they spent crazy and we were, moving all the time because we couldn't afford the rent.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. You're right. So one of the values here might be that, a lot of times we look for outside solutions to inside problems. So when we feel like we aren't good enough, we feel like something on the outside we need to have, so we'll feel better and we'll feel okay. And maybe it's like I need a really huge bank account, or I need a massive house or a fancy car, and then I'll feel okay on the inside, but it just never seems to work until we address the part of ourselves that is making us insecure. So it can be a distraction from doing the work that matters most, which is we should have an inside solution to our own inside problems rather than looking for something on the outside. If I just make enough money, it'll solve all my issues in life. Right. And as much as we say that, we so often like being hypnotized, we just fall into that sort of trap of still acting and behaving as if money's going to solve our issues in life. Right. So
Are you saying that when I go on fishing trips and I don't catch anything and I console myself by buying more fishing lures, that there's a downside to that? Or is that why Amazon shows up every other day? I don't know.
But there is one thing you do catch: some good memories out in the boat with your buddies.
I was gonna say you catch some flack, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. All right. Number 7, why should we have hope for a better future as a result of this experience? Why should we have hope for a better future?
I think it was Joel, I think it was your example. That's I had thought for this one was it's better to make that mistake at a smaller investment earlier on than on your bigger investment in 5 years, or that could have a bigger impact.
Yeah, or realize it like 30 years too late.
Yeah, and you might also say that if we were then in the same situation in future, we might stop the bleeding sooner, which is why we should have hope for a better future, because we gain wisdom and insight and experience from all of these trials and tribulations we experience in the human journey, right? So just going through something hard makes us better able to recognize it and be proactive in future. So the future looks better because we probably won't be as gullible, or we won't just be as passive when things are going in the wrong direction in future. So why should we have hope for a better future? Colby, any thoughts on why we should have hope for a better future?
I think like it's like kind of, I know I've spoke about it before, how like kind of when you're like at this low, there's only one way to go, like you're only going up from there.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. When you've just been losing, chances are eventually you're going to gain the wisdom. Even just the law of averages, things are probably going to go in your favor at some point with one of these investments. Absolutely. So those first 7 questions were all based on the theme of what's good about this, which creates a beneficial shift within us so we can be more creative when answering the next 14 questions. Now, the next 7 are based on what can be learned from this problem, difficulty, or challenge. All right. And the first thing is number 8, how can we best understand what's going on? This is a good one because there's a lot of things we might not understand right now. How can we best understand what's going on? And Steve kind of alluded to this one early on. He said, I should have a meeting with a financial advisor. Maybe I can find out more about, are they putting in a lot of effort, or are they being like careless? Are they being like really thoughtful with my investments, or are they being impulsive? Like maybe I should put myself in their shoes and kind of like try to see things from their perspectives. Is this really the markets, or is their own personal incompetence? Right? Like there could be a whole bunch of different things going on here. Who
That
has
was going to be the bull and bear market. Like sometimes you're going to lose for an extended period of time, and that's part of investing. And if you hold on and you have a huge windfall on the 7th month, then maybe it wasn't the guy. Maybe it was just that you're not as knowledgeable as you need to be, so you learn. You're not as patient as you should be, so you wait.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. So we could be like, was my performance like an exception to the market here? Like, is everyone else gaining right now and I'm the one person losing? Or like, what's going on here? What's their process for giving me guidance? We probably want some transparency at this point. And their unwillingness to provide transparency should be seen as a warning flag. Right? As is often the case. When people have something to hide, they're often not willing to be transparent. Anyone else have any thoughts on how can we best understand what's going on here? Oh, I am frozen.
Oh, I thought it was me. was gonna turn off my camera to see if it helped.
All right. Sorry about that. My connection got unstable.
Well, you are in the Great White North.
I
And you're also like out on a lake, so.
know I'm in the middle of nowhere right now. Just chilling out in the boonies. Yes, so we are going on to how can we best understand what's going on? Charmaine?
Going on.
We're going fishing with Brendan. That's what we need to be doing.
Yeah, I want to hear more about the salmon.
All right. Are we back?
Yes.
All right. Charmaine, how can we best understand what's going on?
Well, I think you need to look at the facts. I mean, that's kind of where people should start. I know there was something they had on the news this week, and I was seeing a bunch of people reacting online, jumping to all kinds of conclusions. And I think the first most important thing to do is really take an assessment of what is reality. What are the facts around it? Not putting any emotion or judgment around it, but just trying to understand it factually for what is.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point. Like, were we being willfully blind and turning a blind eye to this thing? You know, maybe that's part of what was going on, is that we weren't paying attention when we really should have been. You know, we weren't being assertive and we weren't holding people accountable. Right. So that might be a big part of it. And why is that? You know, like, what am I afraid of under the surface? Maybe I'm afraid of conflict. And so when people are letting me down, I'm afraid to approach them about it when they're, you know, so we can understand some of those things. Now, question number 9 is a really important one because it helps shift us out of victim mentality if victim mentality starts to creep in. Okay, which can happen on a lot of problems, and it just weakens us more. So because we start to give away our power. So number 9 is, how am I personally responsible in this situation? Chris, why don't I ask you this one, if you're there, because we haven't heard from you in a bit. How am I personally responsible? What are your thoughts? And he might.
You are personally responsible for everything in your own world, according to Jocko Willink, and you're responsible for your finances, which is a huge part of most people's lives. This allows you to look at not only dealing with one dimension of a financial advisor, but also looking at how you're building up for retirement, kids' college, health, future health issues you may or may not have. And when you start to look at the bigger why of it, helps you take better responsibility of it, because even if you have a bad year and you go into hyperspace and just let everything go, once you start to come out of hyperspace and realize all the damage you've done, you can, you know, it takes a while to fix everything. But then you realize, well, I won't do that again. And you may want to make a system that's automated enough so that although you're still responsible for it, but it's a system you can monitor much more effectively and much more frequently. We're talking about giving money to a financial advisor and then turning out the lights.
Yeah.
If you're responsible, you're going to be checking in with him twice, well, not twice a week, twice a month, once a month, and just see how your investments are doing. Not to see the micro growth, but to see the overall plan and that is being executed. Does the plan have mitigate risk, and does it have alternative plans if things go sideways?
Mm-hmm.
So
Excellent.
I think it's more of a being responsible is looking at the overall strategic view of things than just the immediate successes or wins or losses that you're seeing for the week or for the month.
Yeah. So essentially, the theme of your answer is we're responsible for practicing discernment in our lives over what is working for us and what is not. Right. And that's definitely a big, we can't blame the financial advisor because they didn't force us to invest. It was our choice to pick them. If we chose them out of obligation because they're a friend of the family, that was still our choice. Right.
Yes.
It was our choice to give them money every single time. It is
Well,
still
it's also our choice to discern what our risk tolerance is with this particular person and with this particular strategy.
Yeah. Yeah. And another point is we took a gamble. These things happen. This is a gamble. These things happen in investing. So we're responsible for that. I mean, we shouldn't in any way feel get too down on ourselves once we realize like this is what I got into. This is how it can go sometimes.
And
It
this is
reminds
what the lessons I've learned.
Yes.
Yeah.
Whitney.
It reminds me of I don't know, my grandmother or grandfather told me, if you lend a friend $20 and you don't get it back, it was a cheap lesson in who you want to have be your friends.
That's so true. That's so true.
I mean, this doesn't sound like a $20 lesson, but I'm just saying, get out while the getting's good sometimes. And also maybe not.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Let's go on to number 9 now. Number 9, I'm going to challenge.
Let me say this real quick. If we outsource the decisions in our life, we've outsourced the lessons too.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really good. Charmaine with the wisdom bomb.
Beautifully put.
That's a good one. Now I'm going to challenge you all to think about this one. In this situation, what outcome do we want? Now, when I say what outcome do we want, I want you to think of it in terms of, for the situation, what do we want? What do we want the outcome to be within on the inside? What outcome do we want on the outside? I encourage people to think both internally and externally. Right? So what are some thoughts on what outcome we might want in this situation? Steve, how about you? We haven't heard from you in a bit.
I mean, I think most people would probably say to, not lose money, to maybe stop or start making money, turn it around. And one thing, I think, and this kind of ties back into number 9 a little bit, but a financial advisor can only go so far based on poor responses to a financial analysis. So when you're asking risk tolerance, time frame, what are your major things coming up in your life, and you're kind of wishy-washy, if you're not distinct in, I want to buy a house in 5 years, I want to retire at this time, whatever. So when you're looking at the outcome, if you can't clearly vocalize what it is you want, Tony Robbins says this, right? What do you want? I want more money. Here's $1. Shut your face. I gave you more money, right? What do you want? I want to see X% growth over the next year. I want to see, an increase in this. I want to see a shift from this type of thing into maybe a different strategy. So you have to get very specific with that, because if you're not specific, you cannot get answers, and you're not going to affect any type of change.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we want greater self-awareness, greater clarity. Hold on a second. Here we go. Greater self-awareness, greater clarity. Maybe we want to just not have blind loyalty to things that are not serving us, which is a big point. We'll get back to that one at the end, right? But yeah, maybe we want to just stop the losses for now, and then maybe we want actually to have some gains later on. Anyone else have any thoughts? Joel, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think we've kind of talked about this a little bit, but, Steve said like the obvious goal would be to make more money. But for me, I love learning how to improve systems, or like learning about things and like shortening the learning curve or the trajectory overall. So for me, like, sure, there's value in short-term gain, but I love to have an aha moment and learn how to like fix something so that down the road, if I was investing money or whatever, you extrapolate this to, you shorten the trajectory.
Yeah. So learn my lessons so that I won't find myself in the same situation again. Beautiful. Number 11, what are my personal obstacles? If this is you in this situation, what do you think some of your personal obstacles might be? And we'll just think of like new answers now, because I know we could probably repeat a lot of the stuff we've said, but what would be some of my personal obstacles here?
Emotional reaction instead of logic, right? You set something in place logically, but then when it comes to finances and investing, most people react emotionally, and they get nervous, and they don't keep in mind what their objective was. and they flip out and sell or dump or whatever. And that totally changes what your plan is.
Yep. Yeah. Colby, did you have something to say too?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think the part that would be most uncomfortable for me in that situation would be the fact that it's like a friend or family member, because like I feel like it's easy to like tell a stranger, like, you know, this is like my financial situation and like this is how it's affecting me, and like address the problem, but like it's more likely to cause conflict or be taken personally if it's a friend or a family member. And of course you don't want it to be taken personally because it's not personal, but it always can go in that direction, and it might cause a ripple effect into like not just your financial relationship with this person or business relationship with this person, but also your personal relationship with that person too.
Yeah, that's a really good point, right? Like a personal obstacle might be like, I don't want to tarnish the friendship over this. So maybe we can carefully navigate the conversation
Corey
in a
wants to
way
play
that it doesn't have to. Sorry, did I freeze again?
Yeah.
a little bit.
I'm Patty, now you're frozen.
I freeze you.
Okay, sorry. It is the Great White North, and I keep freezing on my Zoom up here, you know, like
You're just trying to keep us Americans from coming to live there.
I think the mosquitoes are causing the blackout.
all right. So yeah, personal obstacle might be our desire to people please and keep everybody happy. And sometimes keeping people accountable might not keep everyone happy. Oh, I'm frozen again. Darn it.
It's definitely.
Say that it's cold in Canada and maybe it's just frozen like that.
my personal obstacles are my Zoom that is cutting in and out here. And anyway, now personal obstacle might be, oh, am I frozen? No, I'm not. Okay. You guys are all just very still. Personal obstacle might be that I rely on external validation. So I really prioritize being in everyone's good opinion, and I might prioritize popularity over principles. And I might not do the right thing because I'm afraid of ruffling some feathers. Maybe that could be a personal obstacle. Anyway, number
I think
12
it's a good
is
lesson also maybe that for next time or a different situation, you make this kind of decision prior to going with a personal friend or family member, because that is a huge thing. You know, they're really very like, don't do business with family, and something like money is a pretty big personal thing to do. And I think people are like, oh no, you should go, he's great, you love him and he's always there at Christmas, but maybe that's not the right decision.
you're right.
And that's
right.
the obstacle you need to overcome.
And you should have had an exit strategy in advance, and you could say, hey, look, I'm just going to do an experiment investing with you. We're going to invest for just 6 months, and then we'll evaluate the experiment then. And just pitch it as an experiment rather than this overt commitment in which it might feel more intense if you break things off. If it's just an experiment, like, I'm going to do another experiment now. Okay, we learned some good lessons there. That was fine. I'm just going to do another experiment now. Might be a little bit of an easier way to buck off and invest elsewhere, right? So, question 12 is, how do I need to adapt and evolve? We kind of answered that. Number 13 is, how can we, whoops, hold on a second here. How can we best leverage other people? Number 13, how can we best leverage other people? Right? So, for example, I might speak to other friends and family and be like, hey, did you invest with this person? Tell me what your experience was like. Here was what my experience was. How did you get out of it? What did you do? What did you learn? That might be an example. Anyone else have any examples on this? How can we best leverage other people? Colby?
Yeah, so I would say like talking to not just like people who have worked with this friend or family member, like as a financial advisor, but seeing like how other people's investments are doing, like open up the conversation about money in general and see like if other people are making investments, or and if they're getting returns, or if it's just like the economy in general that's in the market that's poor.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we can kind of see like, hey, is anyone else investing in these kinds of things right now and find it's going in this direction?
I was gonna say, you could also get a second opinion from another financial advisor.
Yeah. Yeah, like they might be able to say, hey, look, tell me what happened. Oh, this is totally inappropriate because your financial advisor was not following best practices. It's common knowledge they shouldn't have done this, they should have done that. We don't know what we don't know right now.
You have to walk in with your own critical thinking and your own critical sense of what's going on. What made Bernie Madoff so powerful was the fact that who invested with him gave him a certain amount of credibility indicators. Yet he had a statue of a screw in his office. And when you looked at his chart went up diagonally. One guy came in for a meeting with him, looked at that chart once and said, that's a pyramid scheme, and ran away. He used his own thinking to assess what was going on. And rather than just what was being told to him or using other credibility, trusting what other people did, he looked at it from his own critical thinking lens and made his own assessment of the situation away from everything else, almost in a vacuum. So when we're talking about recruiting other people, you have to look at the people that you're recruiting and how did they vet this person? Did they do a Google search? Did they go to the Better Business Bureau? Did they check out the professional associations that this person should be a part of? I had one woman who said, we have really great ribs. Later on, I found those ribs came from a supermarket because they tasted the same.
Okay, good. And you bring up another good point, Chris, which is also finding a role model who has been successful in this area. And you might say Bernie Madoff, and what was his process? And can I get myself to think the way he thinks? Because, success leaves clues. So maybe I can research, read books, watch videos, and learn from others who are successful in this area.
Not so much, but this person was able to really assess what he was doing and realize that he was doing something highly illegal without being snazzed by all the glitz that he had around him. You're able to look at that and say, that's not a workable model. How is that working? And I think that's really what the critical thing is that being able to go in with your own critical lens and make your own critical opinions, despite having all the other collect the information, but at the end of the day, you make that decision.
Excellent. Excellent. Let's go on to number 14. Number 14 is how can we make this work? How can we make this work? Really, I know this is kind of like a general question for solving any type of problem. In this one, there's probably 3 categories we want to consider. Number 1 is contain the damage. Stop investing more with this person until we get clarity. Divert investments into a neutral place. Learn more. Capture the lessons learned. Research how to be more profitable. Seek clarity on the best path forward. And then just experiment. Try other people or other processes for a trial period, other approaches. Even consider investing yourself. So we might say contain the damage, learn more, and experiment might be how can we make this work? Anyone else have any other thoughts on this one? All right. So those 7 would be what can be learned. Now we go into 7 more questions that are all focused on how we can make the situation better. First of all, number 1 is how can I get into the best state to succeed? How can I get into the best state to succeed? Anyone have any? Patty, why don't we go with you?
That's what Tony Robbins does in the morning to get into state.
Oh.
Right? Bringing all that energy and everything else in and just, I mean, you've got to get yourself into a state. Sometimes that means getting up and getting on the trampoline a little bit, but this physiological state is important to be in.
Yeah. So we might want to create, your Your physiology becomes your psychology. So if you do things that are good for your body, exercising, maybe even meditation, trampoline, whatever, then you might find that your clarity of thought is improved. Excellent point.
Breathing, putting oxygen into your brain, all of that other stuff, mantras while you're walking outside. This is all UPW stuff, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that's one of my bigger takeaways from this, which is now my fourth UPW. It's just that a lot of times I focus on time management, and if energy drives everything, like if low energy gets low energy results, and a high energy state gets high energy results, then I really should be managing for energy and not time, and how to put myself in a peak state as often throughout the day as possible. So that's what I'm working on.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. So thinking in terms of energy management, how do we need to recharge, refresh ourselves to be at our best to deal with whatever trial and tribulation is in front of us? Excellent.
And when you step away.
Sorry, what was
Because
that?
it is an emotional response to a logical circumstance.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Now, number 16 is what are all the possible solutions? Now, we've probably, rather than repeating some of the stuff we've already said, aside from everything said already, what are some more possible solutions? I'll go first. I'll
Burn
just
them at the stake. I'm just kidding.
yeah.
I just needed some energy.
Yeah, there you go. We might say, hey, look, I might as well just start donating to charity, because if I'm going to give away my money, it might as well go to a good cause, right? Like that might be a possible solution, right? Joel, any thoughts?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like kind of like what she was saying, like let the financial advisor go, like change your direction, pivot.
Now, another thing I would also say is maybe we can set some like emotional goals. So, and what is the emotion we were hoping this extra money would give us? Maybe it was a sense of security or significance. How might we meet that emotional goal in a healthier, more sustainable way? You could achieve security through supernatural hope that comes from prayer and spirituality. You could achieve significance by helping people in need and being a really good friend and reaching out and uplifting people rather than showing off with a huge house or a fancy car. So I would say, one of the solutions is to make things right on the inside first and foremost, and recognize what is the need of our personality that needs to be fulfilled, and how might we do it in a better way for the long term. Now, another question would be 17 would be, how should we evaluate our options? It's really, this one for this type of a problem is really kind of, there's a number of pretty standard ones I would say here. It's like, what is our ultimate why and what path will best take us there? Which options work best in the short term? What works best in the long term? What's easy to implement? What's more challenging? What have we already tried? What's something new we can do? What's the low risk options? What's the high risk options? This is how we might evaluate all of our solutions and options moving forward. But which ones we choose will depend on our values. What are our values at this point? Is it making a lot of money fast? We might go with more high risk stuff that's easy to implement, right? Is our value more what's going to be more sustainable in the long term? We might be more patient. So I think with this one, how we should evaluate our options really kind of depends on what is our ultimate why and which path will best take us there. Anyone else have any thoughts on this one? All right.
I think overall, I'm just, a little confused. Like, why would I want to take 21 questions to logically think through something instead of just having an emotional knee-jerk reaction that kind of messes my life up?
Yeah, that's true. And nothing will teach us more than pain, right? So I would say that could be a good way to really learn a lesson. Like, pain is a memorable teacher. So I could definitely say, like, steep yourself in your ignorance and get reactive and triggered and get as self-involved as possible. And you'll get a very, in many ways, the wrong ways in life teach us how to appreciate the right ways. So that can be progress. Pain can lead to progress. I absolutely would not vilify suffering. I would encourage you to do it, but I would also encourage you to pay attention to the outcome. But that's a good point. We're getting closer now. We're at number 18. Number 18 would be, what's the ideal sequence of action steps? And, you know, we might just start with like small, easy wins to build momentum, like baby steps, usually to build momentum, things we can do to start feeling better that are, you know, build up that self-efficacy, depending on the situation. That might be an approach we take here. We might want to just decide to get clear on what went wrong first. Let's just get clear on what went wrong. We need to start with that action step. Because if we don't know where a wrong turn was made, we're likely to make the same wrong turn in future, right? Like, maybe I was just trying to make my parents happy. So I put their happiness ahead of my own. So I used their family friend to invest in, even though I had a bad feeling about it the whole time. And, you know, maybe that's where I made a wrong turn, right? We might want to start with immediate impact stuff, you know, that's easy to implement. Just don't give this person any more money, right? Like, anyone else have any thoughts on number 18? Let's go on to 19. How can we best execute the plan? I think, you know, I'm just going to throw in some ideas here, but we might want to make a list to stay on track. We might want to do something a little every day, keep accountable to somebody else, progressively work through the list, have the list evolve as needed. That's some pretty standard stuff when dealing with just overcoming any sort of a problem of this nature. Just having clarity to ourselves and staying somewhat flexible with our approach as a way of executing forward on this type of a problem.
I would probably put 19 before 18. I would probably make 19 18 and 18 19, because how we best execute the plan is we're listing all those steps, right? And then 19 would be, okay, so what's the ideal sequence of those steps, right? So just kind of that walking through, for me anyway, and maybe it's just my analytical mind.
Done. I'll do that right now. And when I send you guys the handout, it will be switched. Done. Done. Good suggestion. Good suggestion. And, you know, it's easy to adapt this handout. I just threw it together, so it's not perfect by any means. So any more suggestions on how to improve it, I am all ears. So
I'm telling you, this here, I'm taking notes over here. This is gold.
oh, we are frozen
Back
again.
into this. So this has become very personal to me as I'm walking it out. So it's actually a reality exercise for me. So thank you for this tonight.
All right. All right. Absolutely. So it's a reality for all of us, and I'll get to that in a bit. How will we assess and adapt as we go? Usually we need some sort of a feedback loop that we kind of pay attention to on any sort of problem here. And it depends what outcomes we want. If we want more inner peace, ultimately, or safety and security in our life, or significance, or whatever the need is, we can check in with ourselves on that and, you know, use some regular reflection. We could, if it is just a financial outcome and we think that that's going to bring us what we ultimately want, we can just have a way to check in on how our investments are doing, maybe more regularly. Anyone else have any thoughts on that? For number 20?
Just, you know, obviously looking at maybe more frequently in the short term, you know, looking at the numbers. And you know, it's tough because again, with stocks, you can't really micromanage, I guess. You have to trust the process, but also, you know, just pay more moving, or if it's staying the same. And if you need to adapt, then like I said, pivot and, you know, maybe move it somewhere else.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think really I'd break this one into 3. Assess the result. You know, what's the cost benefit analysis? If we're not getting where we want, change the approach and try again and stay motivated. I think that's how we can kind of like move forward with this one here. And then number 21 is, how can I best manage myself as I overcome this? How can I best manage myself? Any thoughts? And this one's really personal.
Find some
Colby?
peace.
Oh, sorry, Whitney, what was that?
First, find some peace.
There
because
you
then
go. Create
properly
some me
look.
time. Yeah, connect with yourself. Colby, your thoughts. How can I
Um,
best manage myself?
First, get good sleep, eat well, talk to friends and family about it, have a support system. Make sure you're like meditating, you have a practice of like gratitude and mindfulness every day.
Mm-hmm.
Wait a second,
Great.
you mean I can have a knee-jerk reaction when I'm furious?
Yeah. Smash my stuff. I'll feel better. It always reminds me when people break their stuff when they're not happy. But Steve, any thoughts? How can I best manage myself as I overcome this?
I was just going to quote Tony Robbins when he talks about, the quality of your life is the quality of your emotions. And so if you are emotionally immature, if you are reactive, if you are ungrateful, if you are, a lot of these things, if you are operate through learned helplessness, right? That it's personal, it's permanent, it's pervasive. You've got to be in a good emotional state. All those other things help, the sleep, the nutrition, the exercise, all that. But if you are always coming back to a low emotional home, where you are, then you're always going to have enough sleep's not going to help. You could talk to your friends, your family till you're blue in the face. If you are always coming back to an emotional trailer park, it's not going to help. You've got to be living in a good emotional state. And the good news is, we all know how to do that. There's resources out there. Tony Robbins, Ed Milet, all these people. Is how we, do that. But to me, that's really key, because I just see that in a lot of people, right? I see it in a lot of times we chalk it up to maybe they're just immature or whatever. But the reality is, a lot of people reset to an emotional fire dump, and you've got to get past that, or you're never going to get the peace that was brought up in the success that you're looking for.
Love it. Great points.
And I think one of the great ways to get there is to learn to enjoy being hit in the mouth.
Yes.
You have to learn to take those hits. You have to learn to move through those emotions of uncertainty, upset, people pressing your buttons, and learning to work with that and withstanding the ocean wave of those emotions, but yet still stand in the surf.
Mm-hmm.
And the more that you look at it as you're learning to deal with those feelings but still deal with the work professionally and effectively, you learn that skill yourself. You learn to manage your emotions by still staying focused on the goal. That this person that this happened, see if you're going to be able to stick with the plan, stick with the motion, or you're going to let this upset you and pull you off track.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the win or lose of it. The more you stay on track, the better you get at it, the more you're learning, the more you're growing, the more you're not in that trailer park mindset anymore.
Yeah.
Because then when you get hit, then when these things happen again, you're ready for it. You know how to handle it. You have felt these feelings of upset, anger, uncertainty before. But now I'm now going through this question process. Now I'm mitigating my risk. I'm now making alternative plans. I'm now reassessing the situation.
Mm-hmm.
That's really what your questions make you do. It's a reality check. What's going on? What's a current diagnosis? Here are some options that you can create yourself. Here are some people who can help you make those applicability and success, and then actual application. And then what are the results of those applications?
Excellent. And I think, a couple other things we could add to this is, a lot of your answers and Steve's answers really hit home with, we just need to be better at handling reality. Maybe we should be humble in opinion, have detachment from our likes and dislikes, not judge the moment, because sometimes when it feels like we're being cursed, over the long term, it turns out to be a blessing through the wisdom gained and how we've expanded our network of people. Maybe this helps bring some other financial advisor into our life that plays a key role in our life in many other indirect ways. We never really know, because human perspective is such a limited, we come from such limited understanding in terms of all space and time, and we tend to get caught up in our opinions, which are largely based on our preferences. And a lot of times the most challenging moments of our lives have led to the greatest growth. So we got to wrap things up, but I just want everyone to kind of like rescore this one with the
Can
new
I just put in one
clarity.
last thing?
Sure, as long as you're quick. Go ahead.
Okay, so opinions are really about the stories that you tell yourself. The stories, if you're telling yourself the same stories, you'll come up with the same, not results, but you also come up with the same actions. Once you start telling yourself a new story repeatedly, you'll come up with new actions, new behaviors, and new feelings. And that becomes a second level that you can then build onto the third level.
So we can tell ourselves a better story. Absolutely. We're not being victimized. We're getting an education, right?
Yep.
Okay, so here's what I want everyone to consider. With the new clarity and direction you have because of unpacking all of this, and now you have a grasp on the context of this and all of the possibilities for this to turn out to be a good thing. What would you now score this on a scale of 1 to 10? And you might remember in the beginning, we had scores that were like, this is a 10 out of 10 bad thing. This is a 9 out of 10 bad thing. I want you to rescore it again and see how well you were able to create a shift within yourself. See how well you were able to turn this from pain to power. Just rescore it and see how well. So we've got scores like a 6, a 4. So definitely some huge breakthroughs in 6.13628845 for Steve. We have some, if you've lowered it by more than 20%, you've had a massive breakthrough. So congratulations. You were able to do the work on yourselves to lift that weight and realize that this was more of an opportunity than anything. Now, here's a little bit of a plot twist. This whole financial advisor that just keeps costing you money, it was actually a metaphor for the things that you tell yourself that get you to feel lousy. When you listen to the part of your mind that says you're not good enough, you're a failure, you're too old, you're too young, that's all cost and no benefit. And you've been doing it, we've all been doing it for years. It's cost you your joy. It's cost you your confidence. It's cost you your ability to connect with other people. We are all indulging in something like this. We have an inner financial advisor, and when we listen to it, it is all cost and no benefit. And maybe we can be more discerning and pay more attention to that, and pay more attention to what's going on inside of us, and be more discerning. Is this really a good thing to be telling myself or not? Why would I invest in that thought by indulging in it? Just pay attention to this dynamic this week of this inner financial advisor that we've all been investing in. And it feels familiar because the voice feels familiar, like a family friend. And that's part of the deceptive subtlety of it. The financial advisor is the disempowering thought process we blindly invest in. And this handout, these 21 questions, are the solution. It redirects our focus, right? So let's go into some final thoughts, key takeaways. Joel, final thought, key takeaway.
So I was just thinking, obviously we have the framework of the financial advisor. I was thinking towards the end more in terms of relationships, how when you take a step back, because I know a lot of times if I'm like frustrated in the moment, with my wife about something, I know if I like take a breather and like calm down about it, we talked about like practices that would help, calm us down. I come at it with much better resourcefulness or resources than if I just have a knee-jerk reaction, which of course I was, joking about that a few times because that tends to happen a lot. Like we just we don't take time to think things through. We just jump into things and we don't bring good resourcefulness. So my takeaway is to, just really take a breath, ask more questions, ask better quality questions.
Yeah, to hold a higher standard on what goes on inside of us. Love it. Love it. Whitney, how about yourself? Final thoughts, key takeaways. And great to have you on here. We're so honored that you joined us here tonight.
Thank you for including me. I think, what really stuck out, and it happened to be my answer, but for me, when I said, is it a bull or a bear market? you need to be cognizant of what else is going on. And it's not always the seemingly obvious, this guy's screwing me over kind of thing, or he's not capable or whatever. Sometimes it is us. Sometimes it's not us.
Yeah, it's a good point. It reminds me of how we need to be accurate in our self-evaluations, because sometimes we're too hard on ourselves. And so sometimes we can just be more fair on
And
ourselves.
we don't grace with ourselves as much as we do with others.
Yeah, exactly. Good point. Patty Baker, final thoughts, key takeaways.
What a night. It's just good stuff here, and plenty of notes to go through for myself. Like I said, as I'm working through this, my own financial advisor that I've been investing in and is continuing to cost me emotionally, mentally, financially, you know, all of these things. And a family member, you know, at that. And I think at the end of the day, when is what is the cost of confronting, you know? At some point there's a cost of confrontation, and it has to be done in a way that is discerning and uses wisdom and leads with love and is purposeful with a positive outcome. And so these questions are good in giving self-evaluation. So I thank you so much for them tonight.
And you might even
Can't
ask,
make this up, huh?
yeah. And you might even ask yourself, how much more pain will there be if I don't take action now?
Yeah,
How much
what's that?
more cost will there be if I don't take action now? Colby, final thought, key takeaway.
Final thought for me is like this conversation kind of it's like I find this topic relevant in my life right now. For example, like I'm reading a book called Change Your Questions, Change Your Life. And it's kind of like these questions that we put down here are like open-minded questions to get us to look at the situation from a different perspective and with a different mind, especially like we mentioned, those knee-jerk reactions. It's so easy to like get in our heads or get overreactive or start blaming other people for our mistakes, like, oh God, this financial advisor, what is he doing with my money? Blah, 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 blah. But if we look at like what we're actually responsible for, then that means that we have a lot more control of the situation than we thought we did. And then that gives us the ability to change the situation and change the outcome and get better results.
Wow, you articulated that. You need to write a book someday. You just, when you write, it's just, when you talk, it's just so poetically perfect. My goodness, it's inspiring. Oh, I am frozen again.
I think he was saying, well articulated.
Yeah.
I'm back. Did you guys forgive me? I'm back. I'm sorry about that.
You are now re-articulated.
Uh,
Well played.
Steve, final thoughts, key takeaways.
You know, like usually most of these that you lead out, I like the framework that you have. I many years ago kind of made this list of blindside questions, stuff that we tend to forget, right? Like, what are my biases? What am I forgetting? What am I, what do I think can't happen? That kind of thing. And on my bullet journal page that I write those, I actually wrote your 3 questions from well over a year ago. What's good? What can be learned? How can I make it better? So I like the expansion of that, because as I'm going through, those are great questions. Even if I don't go 1 through 21 all the way down, there may be 6 questions in there that I can go grab that I need to address, right? I'm not always off on 21 things. I might be off on 6. And so I like that framework that you have built, that I can kind of just tap into, because I don't know that I would come up with those myself as a strategy or a mechanism. So once Joel asks you if you have a handout for that and you say, yes, you're going to dump it in the chat, I then will dump it into my Room 5 folder that I can reference again. But, you know, just good. Those are questions I'd put in there because it's just a good framework to get you thinking. Your answers are only as good as your questions, right? We just talked about that.
Mm,
So you're never going to get good answers if you ask crappy questions.
nice.
And
Excellent.
you're always going to have bad decisions because you don't have good answers to start with.
Excellent. Well said. Well said. What's good about this? What can be learned? How can you make it better? On a butcher knife, please. I will buy one. Because I know that's your thing. Charmaine, final thoughts, key takeaways.
I think we're kind of programmed in this world to think that reacting emotionally now at least is so acceptable, and everybody's trying to justify their emotions, and people tell you you have a right to feel this way. And so I think we've started leaning into those emotions, and sometimes we feel like it's our duty almost to express those emotions, and really we're not processing them. We're just purging them. We're just spitting them out at everybody. And I think the questions are a good way for you to self-reflect and to kind of process through those things before you verbalize. Debrief on it first and really find our accountability in it, find what the true root of things is. And really, it may not even be a problem anymore with another person or with that kind of conflict. It may really be something internally within yourself.
Excellent. You brought up some good points in that, you know, I think sometimes we think it's a good idea to indulge in these dark emotions and stress and anxieties, but most people don't have the skills to stay with it without it consuming us. It's like going into a room of smokers and thinking, oh, it's good, I need to talk to everybody, but then you end up smelling like smoke. And I think a lot of our emotions are inappropriate to begin with. When we have a stressful emotion, we need to ask ourselves, what do I have to believe to be feeling this way right now? And is it really true? Like I might believe, oh, I've been cheated and wronged by my financial advisor. It's like, no, I'm responsible. Like I signed up for this. These things happen. So a lot of times our emotions are not really serving us because they're based on flawed logic, narratives we've told ourselves, often victimhood narratives and everything else. And so we'd be wise to challenge them to see what is it our emotions really telling us and is it really reliable? So great point.
Look for that.
Chris.
What we sign up for is not what happened, but we're signing up to handle and change the situation. We're not signing up for the bus ride. We're signing up to be the bus driver. We're signing up to lead. We're signing up to monitor and change the situation as it evolves. And what your questions do, it's a bridge from being the chess piece to becoming the chess player. It is guiding you to be the strategist. It's guiding you to build a more detailed, well thought out plan. And that's why these questions are long and I wouldn't say painful, but it is a lot of thinking that most not put into their decision making or strategizing in general. Most people will short-term strategize maybe for the day.
Knee-jerk reaction. Knee-jerk
reaction. Knee to knee. And that's what happens, is that we're just doing this knee-jerk reactions. But this will make you take the long game of knee-jerk reactions and start thinking things through and building a better strategy that mitigates risks, has alternative plans, tells you when the end game has occurred to either get out or that you made it to the goal. It's making you think these things through. So as you take the time to answer each question, or as Steve suggested, not every question, but you might want to take 2 or 3 days, depending on how important the situation is, to come up with a decision and a plan. You don't have to come up with it like a microwave and come up with it in 30 seconds, unless you put it into ChatGPT.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Love it. Love it. So, and in many ways, You know, as we face these challenges, our suffering, when we engage with it in this way, our suffering leads to wisdom, and wisdom leads to joy. And isn't that what we're all after anyways? Real long-term happiness. This is the work that matters most. So I just want to honor all of you for being on this call here today and sharing it with anyone else out there who might benefit from these perspectives. Because once again, we do these calls just to benefit suffering humanity in any way, shape, form we can, because we're all in this together trying to figure out how to make best use of a human life. So on the count of 3, we do friends forever, enemies for never, fist bump, group hug, we're out. Okay? Everybody ready? 1, 2, 3. Friends forever.
Friends forever,
Forever.
enemies never. Group hug, because I'm all about physical touch. Ah.
I can see in the dark. This is glasses.